In Pit Lane is proudly brought to you by Dynotech by Dyno Dynamics. For your nearest workshop, visit our website. And with the support of the Ramada Resort, Phillip Island.
Welcome to a brand new season of In Pit Lane and a brand new season of Formula One. Yes, this is an In Pit Lane YouTube channel exclusive. But remember, if you're in Melbourne, that In Pit Lane will return in the brand new time slot of Thursday nights at 10 o'clock on Channel 31 Melbourne and Geelong. So if you're a fan of the program and you want to watch every week, make sure you tune in at the new time, Thursday nights, 10 o'clock on Channel 31. But as we said, this is a YouTube exclusive where we're going to have a look at, for the whole show, at Formula One 2014. This is quite possibly the most anticipated Formula One season that we've seen for at least a decade, if not longer. New regulations, a whole lot of uncertainty, which is all very exciting, and it all kicks off here in Grand Prix City, Melbourne, in a couple of weeks' time with the Australian Formula One Grand Prix. Joining me a little bit later on in the program from ABC Grandstand's Formula One program, Box of Neutrals, will be Rob, James and Mike Lammonato, and also we're going to take you out with some live music from local singer-songwriter Liam Tench. But right now, as we said, uncertainty, new regulations, what's happening in the world of Formula One for 2014? Let's have a look at this primer.
2014 will see the biggest change in Formula One in over a decade. The biggest change is the power plant. The normally aspirated 2.4 litre V8 is gone, replaced by a turbocharged 1.6 litre V6. Horsepower is down from about 750 to only 600, and the RPM limit falls from 18,000 to 15,000. But extra power is now available from the improved new hybrid technology known as ERS. ERS, which stands for Energy Recovery System, is made up of the familiar KERS system as well as a new second electric motor fitted to the turbo. The KERS system last year was limited to only 60 kilowatts of power for up to 6.7 seconds a lap. This year, however, it can produce an extra 150 kilowatts of power for up to 30 seconds. The second electric motor will harness its energy from the spinning turbocharger, and the amount of energy that it can generate is unlimited, and it's here where the biggest gains in power will be found. Cars will now be limited to just 100 kilograms or about 130 litres of fuel. That's down from the average 150 kilograms last year when there was no limit. And the engines must consume fuel at no more than 100 kilograms per hour. From 2014, Formula One gearboxes have an extra gear, but those 8 gear ratios must be selected before the first race of the season, and then used at every track on the calendar. For this year only, teams will be allowed to make one change, but after that, any further changes will incur big penalties. Apart from the engine, the most obvious change for 2014 is the elephant in the room, the nose. For 2014, Formula One has embraced the full-on Jimmy Durante look. Kids, Google it. The result is at best distinctive and at worst just plain fugly. The new rules are supposed to make the car safer by lowering the nose to keep it under the level of the side pods, but the result has been the worst looking Formula One cars ever built, and that's saying something. Aerodynamics have been given a major shake-up as well. The front wings are now 150mm narrower than last year, and the lower rear beam wing is gone, and the position of the exhaust has been moved. This will bring an end to the exhaust-blown rear diffusers that have generated so much downforce over the past few years. This rule change is expected to have the greatest impact on current champions Red Bull.
Regulation changes which involve aerodynamic changes, and therefore how you deal with those aerodynamic changes and how you try to make sure that the mechanical package and the tyres work in harmony with those aerodynamic changes is always a challenge. So I think the rule changes we've had on the aerodynamics certainly present new challenges. There's no doubt about that. Some trepidation, of course. We had a competitive car at the end of last season. With these big changes, that all is history, and it's going to be a challenge of who comes up with the best solutions for these new regulations.
New engines, new cars, new drivers. It's a recipe for uncertainty for the 2014 World Formula One title. And it all kicks off right here in Grand Prix City, Melbourne for the Australian Grand Prix at Albert Park, March 14 to 16.
Well, yes, as you saw, Formula One lands in Melbourne in a couple of weeks' time, but right now everyone's in Bahrain for the final set of testing coming up in a couple of days' time. But from what we've seen so far, if we have a look at the results, well, if you have a look at the top 10, you'll notice something very interesting. In fact, you'll notice something not there. Joining me to talk about this year's season in Formula One from ABC Grandstand's Box of Neutral program, Mike Lammonato and Rob James. And gentlemen, your starter for 10, when you look at that top 10 in Bahrain from last week, what is missing?
Well, I actually think it is the HRT Formula One squad. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how they're going to bring a car to Melbourne. I don't think, this is an exclusive only, I don't think they'll make it to Melbourne.
I've got some very bad news for you, Rob.
Yeah?
Got some very bad news indeed. But the thing that is missing is, of course, Renault.
Yeah, Renault.
No Renault in the top 10.
And not to mention Red Bull, who everyone would have imagined would be at the top 10. But Renault is facing, for a team that's, rumours over the off-season were going to be the engine, are suddenly facing this catastrophic situation where it just doesn't really work. Yeah, the Renault's it's not working.
It's a sad state of affairs when the highest running team that has a Renault donkey in the back of the car is Caterham. And they are by no means one of the quick teams on the grid. I mean, they got Kamiro Kobayashi, who's quick, at one-liners and zingers on Twitter.
And even if, Caterham's doing really well, does Renault want the Caterham being the flagship car? I mean, it is ugly.
Well, that's interesting. We'll get onto that when we come back after the break. But I think. Do you think it's a real problem for Renault? Some people are saying, look, come Melbourne, everything will be sorted. But do you think they've got real problems?
Well, it is potentially a huge problem because at the end of February, it is the homologation date, which means that they can't change their engine unless it's for safety grounds. So if they haven't nailed this engine, that's problems for the rest of the season for Red Bull, for Lotus, for Caterham, sure. But that's a year-long marketing disaster, essentially, for one of the biggest car manufacturers of the world.
And historically as well, Renault have always been weird about the engine regulations because in the previous incarnation with the V8s, they weren't one of the fastest engines on the grid. They often asked for dispensation. We need more performance. I mean, there was always talk about Red Bull Racing going over to Mercedes-Benz because they had that power plant, and it's almost like history repeating itself again for 2014.
Well, it's certainly going to be fascinating because everyone just more or less expected that the Red Bull juggernaut would continue, but that looks like it might not be the case. But we'll look at that in more detail when we come back after this break. And, well, as this is our YouTube channel, we don't have to worry about silly things like restrictions on talking about our sponsors. And our very good sponsors are Dyno Dynamics, and we thank them for their ongoing support for the show. So we'll take a break now and we'll show you this word from our friends at Dyno Dynamics, and we'll be right back with more In Pit Lane, the special Formula One preview edition, right after this break.
More power, better fuel economy, a cleaner, more efficient engine. They're just a few of the advantages of having your car tuned on a Dynotech dyno. To find your nearest Dynotech workshop, go to dyno.com.au. Dynotech by Dyno Dynamics.
Welcome back to this special edition of In Pit Lane, the 2014 Formula One season just around the corner, starting right here in Grand Prix City, Melbourne, on the streets of Albert Park. And our special guests are Mike Lammonato and Rob James from ABC Grandstand's Formula One program and podcast Box of Neutrals. And guys, let's have a look, let's sort of work our way up from the bottom, I suppose. Caterham and Marussia, any chance at all?
Well, they're there. That's a good chance. Other than that, it's difficult to say.
Are we allowed to say Formula Dictonics on this program?
We're allowed to say it, but it would help if we knew what it meant.
Well, you can work it out for yourself at home. It's. I think there's another channel called Tube at the end of it that perhaps fills in that story.
Well, so you don't give them any. I mean, Marussia, the interesting thing with Marussia is now they've got Ferrari engines, and of course they've got a lot of Russian money, which of course is the Australian motor or the international motorsport equivalent of the Australian expression "colourful Sydney racing identity."
Well, Gay Waterhouse isn't involved in Marussia, unfortunately, so that's
How
what
do
they're
you
missing.
know?
Well, we don't know that as well. Gay Waterhouse, if you're watching, give us a call.
Caterham, I think, is an outside chance. They actually look like they've come to grips with the Renault power plant.
I would agree with that as well. I think Tony Fernandez, the guy who owns the team, he's been saying if we don't do well this season, we've got the best infrastructure. That's his words. And he's apparently got the most exciting driver lineup, which actually I believe with him. I think Marcus Ericsson, with his GP2 performance, he's a pretty good steerer behind the wheel of a Formula One car. Kamui Kobayashi is a proven quantity as well. And they've had the most number of laps, as I've said before, with the Renault engine. Marussia's the weird one, though, because they have had the least amount of kilometres with the Ferrari engine. And that's a pretty quick donkey as well, if you judge the performance of, who is it? It's Sauber and Ferrari who have that engine.
They did turn up 3 days late, though, to
Oh, yeah.
Jerez. So
Well,
take some of those laps off.
Which is not a good sign.
The
Yeah,
truck
but-
broke down on the way
Yeah.
to testing in Jerez. That's
Yeah.
not a good
Yeah,
sign.
that's
So
a
not
really
a
Heaven
great
forbid if
start.
you're in Bahrain and the truck
And
breaks
actually,
down.
during the Bahrain test, they lost a whole day because their computer got a virus. So it's a terrible start.
No,
So we're writing off Marussia.
Well, as we said, Russian money.
yeah, exactly.
no longer exist.
One team that I think will make a big improvement this year, I mean, this is my opinion, but for what it's worth, is Williams. Felipe Massa coming on board now. They've done well in testing. They've got the Mercedes engine this year.
Allegedly the Martini livery, so they'll be popular amongst the historic
Yeah.
figures of motorsport.
And alcoholics everywhere.
Absolutely, yeah, and the French.
And Pat Simmons, don't forget, running the technical side of things, who renowned for things other than cheating a lot, allegedly. He's designed what looks like a really great car. They've got a good amount of sponsorship behind them. Felipe Massa is a known quantity.
Valtteri Bottas is the guy. He was a bit of a, the jury's still out on him. Last year wasn't the true justice that he deserved for his performances, but he did do quite well if you compare him against Pastor Maldonado and his endless money bags of PDVSA money. But he needs to perform well this season as well. And I think with Felipe, he needs that confidence behind him. One, he's got Rob Smedley back. Alongside him
that's
as
a
well
big
at
sign.
Williams. That's a good sign for Felipe to build up his confidence. And plus, he's the indisputed team leader as well.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. The other team, Toro Rosso, Sauber, and Force India are sort of next on the list. Toro Rosso are interesting.
Yeah.
They make the move to the Renault engine this year alongside the sister team Red
Just
Bull Racing.
regret for that move. They had Ferrari engines and they
yeah.
threw them away, and now
Could have
what's
worked
happened?
brilliantly. There was a remark that we spoke about before from Gary Anderson, the renowned technical Formula One journalist, and he rated some of the performances of the teams in testing. He rated Red Bull Racing, the senior team, lower than Toro Rosso. And given historically Toro Rosso won Red Bull's first ever Formula One race, it's not impossible to see Toro Rosso perhaps outperforming the bigger squad.
It is
you
interesting.
would imagine John Eric Verne is going to be absolutely determined to show Helmut Marko and all the rest of the people and Christian Horner that perhaps they got it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. That's the question that I think a lot of people still have on their minds after last year. Daniel Ricciardo, I think from our perspective, and not just on the Aussie pride perspective, if you'll allow me to say that, is I think he had the edge. But there are a lot of questions because Jean-Eric Vergne certainly seemed to perform better in a number of races. So that is something that he'll be keen to prove definitely. And I mean, that's a lot of pressure for Ricciardo
and also
too.
not to mention Daniel Kvyat or whatever, or Kit Kat or Fiat, whatever his surname is. He's a quick youngster as well. He's only
with Russian money.
With Russian money as well, conveniently. There's also Russian Grand Prix. And as well, with Dr. Marco notoriously fickle with his drivers, if Daniel Ricciardo has a Sergio Perez-esque performance of 2013 for this year, hopefully that doesn't happen. But, you know, he's got some young guys that could easily step into the breach if it does not work out for whatever reason.
Another team that looked like they're going to make a major improvement in 2014 is McLaren, and they've done very well. Their lead driver, of course, is Jenson Button, and we caught up with Jenson Button and asked him about season 2014 and what he expected out of the new regulations.
Formula One is, in a way, all about rule changes. It's about adapting, and it's about doing the best you can and pushing everything to the limit with new regulation changes. So it's nothing new to the sport. I think that these changes possibly are the biggest we have for a little while. But, you know, I think it's exciting for everyone. You know, we're all very excited here at MTC to really get the best out of the new rule changes. You know, I think Formula One in 2014 it's going to be about speed. It always is. You know, it's about trying to be the fastest car out there. But I think it brings back what it has been in previous decades of being the most reliable team also and the most consistent team.
Well, McLaren's certainly performing well. The interesting thing is, once again in testing, at this stage, the newcomer, young Magnussen, Jan Magnussen's son, is actually faster than Jensen so far.
Mm-hmm. And he's proving a lot of people wrong when people were speculating that these cars were going to be too slow. He brought, I think his fastest lap was within 2 seconds of the fastest lap at Bahrain last year, which is great news for the sport, but he is doing really, really well. Absolutely,
and not to mention the fact that Jenson Button last year with Sergio Perez you would have thought would have wiped the floor with him. He even, made, Lewis Hamilton look a little bit ordinary in some of the races. And if he can do that, and if Magnussen could usurp Jenson Button as, I guess, the number one driver of the team in 2014, Jenson's just going to have, it's going to be a tough start to the year as well with him losing his very iconic father, John, but as well, he's had a long time in Formula One. Is this the beginning of the end for Jenson?
It'll be interesting. I mean, this is an important final phase, a Mark Webber phase. Now, what can he do with it?
It is. I mean, the analogy with Mark Webber is interesting because I mean they are both very experienced, both coming to the end of their career, and I suppose that it's like how many years has Jenson got left? You would say at least 2 or 3 if he continues to do well. But yeah, if Magnussen does really well, that towards especially with the Honda engine coming next year, they might just say, well, new broom, let's sweep it clean.
Is Jenson the oldest driver on the grid?
No, I think Kim is. He's the most experienced though. But the other thing with McLaren,
he started in 2000, turn of the century.
So he's the most. He's
he'd be the most experienced, I think.
But McLaren at this stage is so unpredictable. Now that Ron Dennis is back in the frame, running the entire organisation,
that's got to be a tick. That's got to be a tick.
That is a tick. We don't know where Martin Whitmarsh has gone. If you've seen him, call the show, please. We
don't
know where he is.
1-800-333-000 if anyone's found Martin Whitmarsh.
And then the way they sacked Perez with something like a week's notice, and then Jenson came out next week and said, "Why'd we sack Perez? He's really good. What have we done?"
The amazing thing was, McLaren said Martin Whitmarsh was giving Perez a very good reference to all the teams, and they all said, "If he's that good, why'd you sack him?"
Why'd you sack him? Exactly. Well, we'll find out when we come back. We're going to take another break, but when we come back after this break, we'll have a look at the rest of the field, including the defending champions and the people who might be in the biggest trouble so far this year, and that's Red Bull Racing. Also, live music from Melbourne Geelong Singer-Songwriter Liam Tench. You're watching In Pit Lane. The special Formula One preview edition will be right back after another word from our friends at Dyno Dynamics.
More power, better fuel economy, a cleaner, more efficient engine. They're just a few of the advantages of having your car tuned on a Dynotech dyno. To find your nearest Dynotech workshop, go to dyno.com.au. Dynotech by Dyno Dynamics.
Welcome back as we preview the 2014 Formula One season, which kicks off here in Melbourne in a couple of weeks' time. And guys, with testing, the next team off the rank is probably the biggest team of all, Ferrari, and they're looking quietly
Questionable,
Yeah,
because
Like
every
a dustbuster?
every year it's like a Toyota or Formula One. It's reliable, but you never know how quick they're going to be. I mean, this year they have to do it. They have to do it for Fernando Alonso's sake and Pat Fry's sake, Luca de Montezemolo's sake.
Stefano Domenicali's
That's the
sake,
guy who was actually
everybody's
after.
sake. I mean, it's interesting for them because they should have the advantages here. They've got the engine and the chassis manufacturers in the one building. If they come below anyone other than Mercedes, that's just not acceptable. Like, that's simply not acceptable.
That is the interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, now more than ever, that whole it's the whole package. It's not just a matter of buying an engine from somewhere and dropping it in a bespoke chassis. This is now, you've really got to look at the whole picture, like in much the same way as you do in P1 at Le Mans. It's really got to be the whole car to make the most of that complex plumbing and engineering.
What I'm interested in is how focused is Ferrari really on Formula One? Because we saw the footage that was leaked late last year of the LaFerrari chassis with supposedly this V6 F1 engine. Now, a lot of people have been saying, is this a possible tilt of Ferrari coming to Le Mans? Because as we know, the engines that are currently in Formula One are very easily going to be adapted into endurance racing. Is Ferrari going to give up the ghost on that regard?
Yeah, and of
sort
course,
to have two programs running simultaneously as Ferrari's flagship.
and Stefano
I
Domenicali,
couldn't see Ferrari ever leaving Formula One, quite frankly, unless
Not
they
leaving,
were
but having
really
two programs side by
Yeah.
side.
possibly two programs. But that whole thing with the Le Mans project, somehow. I'm not thinking that's going to happen. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
It would be fantastic. But I've got my doubts. Kimi Raikkonen joins Fernando Alonso this year. How are they going to get along?
well, the drink will flow. We know that much.
Oh yes,
possibly. I think
yeah.
they're,
I had a weird dream that Kimi was he almost had a change in perspective on life. He was like a newfound Christian again, where he said, "I've stopped drinking. I'm going to focus on work and concentration." I woke up and I went, "That was clearly a dream."
Clearly
because
a
he's
dream or a
not
nightmare.
or a nightmare as
Yeah.
well. If you're a sponsor of alcoholic beverages at Ferrari, but I think Kimi will give Fernando a good shake, but I don't see Kimi getting the edge over Fernando. I just don't see it.
Yeah, for one thing, he doesn't use a simulator, Kimi Raikkonen. Allegedly, they've made him use one, but he doesn't enjoy it. And I think Fernando is the best driver in the world for my sort of ticket.
Still?
So, well, okay, at least in Formula One. Like, he's almost a complete package of a driver, whereas Raikkonen, he's not always all there.
I'm just waiting for the moment in time that we hear the words, Kimi Fernando is faster than you, just to hear what the response is going to be.
You'll just hear the headphones unplugged.
Just be quiet.
And that's it.
Leave me alone. It'll certainly be interesting. Fernando Alonso spoke about 2014. Let's hear a word now from Ferrari driver Fernando Alonso.
Definitely, I think in 2014 the Formula One will change a lot with the new regulations. That will take also some implications on the driving style. So definitely, I'm looking forward to discover this new Formula One. I think Kimi and me as a team, we should be quite strong on the paper because we had some success in the past in the Formula One career, but this you need to discover every year. We start from zero. If we do well, we will have a very strong team and we can deliver some good results for Ferrari. If we don't do good enough, some other teams we have another best pairing drivers. So it's up to us to deliver and to do a good job.
Well, the team that's setting the pace at the moment in testing, both at Jerez and in Bahrain, certainly as far as the second test session is concerned, is of course Mercedes. They are really looking like the deal now. I mean, they've gone to sudden favouritism.
Well, last year they started off the season as sort of up there with the likes of Lotus, possibly closest to Red Bull Racing. Of course, Red Bull Racing were up in the stratosphere last year. But if Mercedes-Benz, they know how to win races now. This is the important thing. And now Ross Brawn is sort of, going, the team has done well. I leave you to your own devices now. Don't muck it up, please. Even though they have a whole committee meeting of designers and technical chiefs and all sorts of people, they know how to win races now. And Nico Rosberg knows how to win races. Lewis Hamilton's won world championships, a world championship before. But I think out of anyone this year, Nico Rosberg is your danger man.
He is. He's been the most underrated driver for a little while now. You can't discount the fact that he really gave it to Lewis Hamilton last year. The points showed that was very close. Mercedes also has hired every technical director pre-2005 in its team. So that had to come good eventually.
Yeah.
The car looks solid, the engine looks solid.
Look, I'll just say this. Lewis Hamilton is making music records. Nico Rosberg isn't.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
You work out the work ethic.
Well, I've heard the alleged music. There's nothing musical about
Look it up on YouTube.
at all. But he's got an interesting hair. He's getting the
The Fro's back! I'm so happy about this.
Yeah,
So
that's
good.
very exciting.
This is the main worry when the main aesthetic highlight of Formula One in 2014 is Lewis Hamilton's hair.
When an afro is the most attractive thing on the Formula One track, you know something's a bit amiss.
That is terrible. Now, of course, let's get to the elephant in the room. Red Bull. They've had a terrible test session. Dan Ricciardo joining Sebastian Vettel. Everyone just expected the juggernaut to continue. Are they sandbagging, or do they have real problems?
Yeah.
I just want to appeal to all of the Herald Sun News Limited journalists that are invariably going to be writing stories about Daniel Ricciardo this year. If the car's not up to scratch and Daniel Ricciardo is not winning races by the time we head to Singapore or something like that this year, don't write him off just yet, because all we need. This might be the perfect opportunity for Dan to really stamp his authority against Vettel, because if Vettel freaks out that the car's not up to scratch to Vettel tick of approval, and if Dan Ricciardo somehow edges that mental capacity of Vettel of him freaking out, this might be Dan's year to sort of not win races, not win championships, but to build that reputation with the team technically and as well within the Vettel.
That's going to be the thing, is how is Sebastian Vettel going to handle the fact that he doesn't have that supreme car anymore?
Because we saw with Mark Webber had the edge, well maybe not the edge over Vettel, but he was on equal terms when the car wasn't perfect, when the tyres weren't all there or whatever the reason was. So suddenly this is the opportunity for Ricciardo, and it's been said, there's a lot of pressure for Ricciardo, but surely Vettel is under more pressure here. He's the 4 times world champion, Ricciardo's the new kid. If Ricciardo's showing him up, that's not a good look for him.
Vettel hasn't had a bad car since 2008, with technically BMW Sauber in 07, but it's been a long time since he's had an average car.
Well, it is going to be interesting, the whole dynamics between Sebastian Vettel and his new teammate Daniel Ricciardo. And Daniel Ricciardo was asked about how he thought he would get along with his new teammate Sebastian Vettel.
I'm really excited to be alongside Seb this year. You know, he's achieved so much in so little time as well. But to be a 4-time world champion, you know, no matter what the circumstance, no matter how long he's been doing it, is an amazing thing. And I have a lot of respect for that and a lot of respect for him. So I'm just really looking forward to learning as much as I can and hopefully, you know, challenging him. Of course, you know, I want to try and get some success. But to do that, first I have to respect him and then go forward from there.
Okay, gentlemen, we'll wrap it up there. First of all, let's put you on the spot. Michael, your tip for Drivers' World Champion and Constructors?
Mercedes for the Constructors, and I want to say Rosberg.
I'm going to say Lewis Hamilton's Afro and Caterhub's pleasuring device.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm sort of going to go with Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton. I think just because of the fact that. I think he's been there before and he's shown that he can handle the pressure. But it's going to be a fascinating. I don't remember a time when we've sort of looked forward to a Formula One season quite so much. So it'll be fascinating when the cars hit the track at Albert Park in a couple of weeks' time. But for now, guys, very quick plug, Michael. Where can people hear Box of Neutrals around Australia and around the world?
Well, when the cricket's not on.
Yeah, when there's no cricket, ABC Grandstand in the afternoon, there about 3:30. But check boxofneutrals.com for times and details.
Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud. We don't have an Instagram yet.
We'll give you Peter McGinley's address if you like, but
our panel
probably not time.
And we're all good books are sold.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, guys. Thank you to our guests tonight, Mike Lammonato and Rob James from ABC's Box of Neutrals. And thank you for joining us here on In Pit Lane. Remember, In Pit Lane, the television show, returns Thursday night, 10 o'clock on Channel 31 Melbourne. Coming up, we'll have previews of the Phillip Island Historic and also, of course, all the news from Albert Park. Joining us, as has become a tradition now here on In Pit Lane, will be in a couple of weeks' time, Andrew Westacott from the Australian Formula One Grand Prix Corporation. It wouldn't be a Grand Prix without him coming on the show, and that has been confirmed. Andrew Westacott will be here. So we're going to take you out now. We're going to take you out with some live music. We like to get some live music because there's so much talent around Melbourne. We like to give it a chance to shine here on In Pit Lane. Joining us now to take us out is Liam Tench. He's a Geelong Singer songwriter, and he's going to take us out with the song, which is You Weren't There by My Side. Until next week, bye for now. Liam Tench.
I still remember lying in the rain, feeling sorry for myself. Little did I know it would never be the same. The lights that led the way, they all went out. 'Cause I tried so hard to find my way home, 'cause the directions were written down wrong. And so I tried to stumble my way back blind. It was a hopeless task, 'cause you weren't there by my side. The days they roll by when pain and misery are the only emotions that you feel. A dozen empty bottles are the only friends you see, and the only friendship that you need. 'Cause I tried so hard to find my way home, but the directions were written down wrong. And so I tried to stumble my way back blind. It was a hopeless task, 'cause you weren't there by my side. Lonely days, they consume me. I hope that one day I'll be free. 'Cause I tried so hard to find my way home, 'cause the directions were written down wrong. And so I tried to stumble my way back blind. It was a hopeless task, 'cause you weren't there by my side.